So hold up, is Oda telling us that Blackbeard is literally a god now? Because in this panel right here, we learned that Rox wasn't just building a very OP crew, he was looking for two very specific legendary devil fruits to take down Imu. And I would bet my cat Gojo that one of these fruits was the darkness fruit. And if that were to be the case, then Imu is of course in way more danger than they realize, because we might be seeing a Luffy x Blackbeard team up that we never thought was really possible before. So today I want to break down with you all the possibilities for how these legendary devil fruits might be used to take down the evil king of the world. And this has been something in the back of my mind for literal years, honestly. Like, what is gonna be the key to taking down Imu, and also who's gonna be the final villain of the story, right? There are a lot to choose from: Blackbeard, Imu, Akainu, etc, etc. But right now, at this very moment, it seems that the answer is Imu, and that the answer to taking them down is, well, these devil fruits. So let's talk about the most logical fruit that Rox could have been after here, which I hope you would agree is of course the darkness fruit. This one just makes way too much sense, especially when you look at Blackbeard, of course, because yeah, Teach isn't just some ambitious pirate, he's quite literally Rox the Zebek's son. And if you've been paying attention, it really seems like he's just on his own now, continuing Rox's exact plan pretty much. Just like his father, he wants to now become the ruler of the world and take down Imu. He's been busy collecting some insanely powerful devil fruits, he took over Pirate Island, so with all of those points in mind, what's the one fruit that Blackbeard literally spent decades searching for that then started his entire thing? Yeah, the Yami Yami no Mi. Remember, he spent a majority of his life on Whitebeard's crew very much specifically looking for this one devil fruit, and you just don't do that for any random cool power. Teach knew that this fruit was special, legendary even though we do throw around that word a lot, it is actually a legendary fruit. And it fits perfectly if Rox was the one who told him, directly or indirectly, what he was supposed to look for. In Teach's word, the ultimate Logia fruit. And come on, I think we can agree that the darkness fruit, without a question whether special or not, is absolutely cracked. I mean, it can suck in anything, nullify other devil fruit powers, and swallow entire towns in a black hole. It's quite literally anti-devil fruit, I guess. So if your plan is to go up against these so-called gods of the world, well, this seems like a very good candidate as your anti-god weapon. But here's the wild part, because ever since I read this chapter here and found out that Rox was actually looking for not one, but two specific devil fruits, I just can't stop wondering if he actually ever found them. Like, is that the reason that he failed? I mean, he knew that one of them was in Elbaf, the one that we've heard a lot about, but what about the second one? Did he just never manage to find it? I mean, I can't see that with the Yami Yami no Mi, since even Blackbeard had no real idea where it was or who had it for decades. But hold on, there is a real chance that Rox did indeed obtain this fruit, because there is a very big mystery about a secret treasure of Pirate Island. Supposedly there was a very important treasure that was stolen by the world government, and then part of the main reason that the Rox pirates even went to God Valley in the first place, which was to get that treasure back. If that was the darkness fruit, that would very certainly explain why they went to God Valley if it was one of the two fruits that Rox knew he needed in order to fulfill his plan. And of course, the world government, just like with the Nika fruit, would also probably want the fruit if Imo and the Gorosei knew it was one of these so-called legendary fruits that might be dangerous to them. So then maybe it was lost for decades after the events of God Valley, until Blackbeard finally got his hands on it when he was part of Whitebeard's crew. I will say though, I'm super curious about this because we do know at least two of the devil fruits that were offered as prizes on the island, right? Kaido and Kuma's devil fruits, and they ate them and got away with no problem whatsoever. So was it only another devil fruit, the one that Rox truly wanted, that they couldn't get to? I mean, I'm not sure, man, but I'm very hyped to see the full story of what happened in God Valley very soon, hopefully. And whether Rox really failed to get it or the world government stole it from him, the darkness fruit is almost definitely one of the two that Rox needed to take down Emu, or that he thought he needed. Which means, all right, now we gotta talk about, yes, the Nika fruit, because this one might be even more important than the darkness fruit, or equally important. And in this chapter, Rox quite literally said that one of these two legendary fruits was in Elbaf, and that he wanted King Harold to eat it and then join his crew. Now, I gotta be real, that information dump by itself is already pretty wild, but when you line up the timeline of what we know about Harold's death and the Nika fruit, it does start looking fairly obvious, I gotta say. Let me lay it out for you. Harold died 14 years ago, and in the same chapter, we saw someone clearly going in and stealing the legendary fruit in Elbaf. Then, just 1 year later, Shanks stole Luffy's fruit from Cypher Pole, which was of course the one that then awakened into the sun god Nika. So yeah, putting the pieces together here, it is fairly likely, I would say, that the fruit in question was the Nika fruit. We have talked about this before. And if that were to be the case, that means that Rox knew that this fruit was in Elbaf and most likely knew the real power of the Nika fruit years before anyone else really seemed to have it on their radar. But here's where things get crazy and also a little bit complicated. Rox explicitly wanted Harold, the king of the giants with ancient giant blood, to awaken this fruit. So if this is true, and it was the Nika fruit that Rox wanted, that tells us two very big things. First, Rox believed that Harold had what it took to unlock the true potential of this fruit and awaken Nika, meaning that he thought he was a Luffy-level character with his unbreakable will, one of the strongest to ever do it. But also, secondly, Rox didn't want to eat the fruit himself, it seems. So we gotta ask, was this a strategy thing? Like, he didn't want to eat a fruit at all? Or did he want to eat a different fruit, like maybe the darkness fruit, and he didn't think he could eat two at the same time? Or maybe another option, he already had a completely different fruit and thus wasn't able to eat either of them. And this tiny question actually opens up a whole different mystery. Plus, if you want more evidence that this fruit in Elbaf might have been the Nika fruit, well, we already know that Elbaf is just loaded with connections to Nika's history. From their common myths to the Harley text and the ancient mural, there's just so much connection here to Nika and the sun god. It just makes sense that the fruit would be here. But here's what really gets me. How did Rox, out of all people, know about the Nika fruit in the first place, right? The Gorosei have kept its true identity hidden on purpose for centuries, and literally since the Void Century, no one seems to have awakened it successfully. They very much actively erased it from the records and turned it into the rubber fruit. Turns out that even the Cypher Pole agents didn't know what they were guarding here when Shanks took the fruit from them. So how did Rox know about this decades ago? Did he read a poneglyph? Meet someone ancient from the Void Century? Like, how did he even know about the ancient frozen Galela giants, a whole different part of his plan that we learn about in this chapter too? Maybe he had an inside source in the top levels of the government? Whatever the case may be, it does show to me just how far ahead of everyone Rox was in his time, right? He had all this knowledge and all these thoughts before anyone, even Roger, ever dreamt of Laugh Tale and Emu and whatnot, right? So I do think we've made some pretty solid arguments here for the darkness and the Nika fruits being the two legendary powers that Rox was after, but to be fair, we do still not know for sure, of course. As you very well know, Oda loves to keep you and me guessing, so let's go through a few other devil fruits that absolutely could have been part of Rox's master plan instead, just in case, right? Starting with one that I bet you forgot was already explained to be the key to taking over the world, which is Law's devil fruit, the Ope Ope no Mi, which honestly came to mind first as an alternative here. And we gotta go back all the way to Dressrosa and remember what Doflamingo said about the fruit specifically. He said that if he had Law's fruit, he could have used the sacred treasure of Marijua. And no, we don't know yet what that treasure is and why Doflamingo wanted it, but we can very well assume that it has something to do with Emu. That's not just villain talk. Dofi was a former celestial dragon. That is Oda quite literally telling us that this fruit is important and busted. And don't forget about the entire personality swapping thing and the perpetual youth surgery. I don't know, maybe Rox wanted to stay alive until his plan came true, or give that power to someone else like Harold or himself after he consumed one of the other fruits, or do some weird, personality shenanigans. Now, to be honest, I gotta say that the Ope Ope no Mi doesn't exactly fit Rox's personality. I mean, this is a very technical fruit, and Law is so good with it because of his high medical expertise, right? High skill and knowledge requirement right here. And to me, Rox kind of gives off more this, straight up brute strength kind of energy. So while the Ope Ope no Mi is definitely a very powerful devil fruit, overpowered even, it doesn't really feel like a fruit that Rox himself would use, but still, we can't rule it out because he might have wanted it for someone else on his crew. And also, Rox, we keep talking about this, despite seeming like a Luffy type, he knew a lot. He had a lot of knowledge, he was very cunning, had this big plan, so maybe it does fit after all. And don't forget that Blackbeard ran into Law Law with his fruit and then suggested that Law use the immortality surgery on him when they fought, so maybe that's what Rox wanted to do as well. But okay, I don't want to get too lost in the details here. Let's talk about something much more important. Let's talk about Loki's devil fruit. Now, we of course don't technically know yet what it is, but based on what we've seen in the Elbaf arc so far and a few flashbacks, my best guess is that Loki has some sort of Hellflame serpent fruit, or maybe even a mythical zone linked to Norse mythology. Either way, it does seem to be a very big deal in Elbaf, and we're kind of technically told that Loki did eat the legendary treasure fruit of Elbaf, so what if that's actually straight up true and it was not the Nika fruit? Let's address that for a moment here too. Like, what if this is actually the legendary Elbaf fruit that Rox was talking about instead? Maybe it wasn't Nika to begin with, maybe it was always Loki's, and since Loki of course idealized Rox, it does very much track that he'd end up eating the fruit that Rox wanted his father Harold to eat in order to join his crew, which, you know, Harold refused, but Loki wanted to join Rox more than anything else. So could this be Loki's way of honoring his dad, and maybe he hoped that by eating the fruit, Rox would then finally let him join the crew? Although, if Loki didn't eat the fruit until after his father's death, then Rox would have supposedly been long dead at that point as well anyways. A lot of interesting, weird timeline things going on here. And then we also gotta talk about the Tremor fruit, Whitebeard's old fruit. I mean, this was the second fruit that Blackbeard went after and ate himself, which I think is very telling. Think about it, Blackbeard had this big plan, and if Blackbeard is just straight up following Rox's blueprint, then the Tremor fruit might have straight up been part of the original plan too. Even though yes, it is very strong and you might want to have it, if Blackbeard has this very, I need to do this, and get these things, then why would he eat a fruit that doesn't fit in there for no reason? No, he planned everything out so he could take Whitebeard's fruit specifically, right? Now, interestingly enough, we actually don't know when Whitebeard ate this fruit to begin with, so it is very possible that Rox's gang found this fruit at some point, maybe even God Valley, or Whitebeard could have eaten it after the crew broke apart maybe. And to be fair, it's never officially been called a legendary devil fruit, but let's be real here, it is one of the top 5 strongest fruits in the series easily. I mean, it can quite literally crack the sea and shatter islands, and most importantly, it could absolutely destroy the Red Line if you used it right. It has been called a devil fruit that has the potential to destroy the entire world. And taking down the Red Line has been hinted at as a major step in reshaping the world and, you know, finishing the third world and going to the next one. Exactly the kind of world-breaking move that a guy like Rox would absolutely aim for, I think. It's not that hard to imagine. Alright, so for now, let's move forward with the idea that the two fruits that Rox was hunting here were the Nika fruit and the Darkness fruit. Because if Rox needed both of these powers to take down Emu, then it basically means that Luffy and Blackbeard might both have to get involved in the final showdown against the world's biggest villain, which is a huge hint at how the end of the story might be playing out, I think, and would also be an insanely fun twist of, you know, the expectation that Luffy and Blackbeard absolutely need to clash. Well, what if they become allies instead, right? Because you see, I've always been so curious about the order of everything playing out in the endgame of One Piece. Like, are we supposed to get Luffy versus Blackbeard first in the battle for the One Piece, and then Luffy versus Emu to save the world? Or was it gonna be the other way around? Where does Akainu fit in? Where does Shanks and Buggy and all these other people fit in, right? Well, now it really seems like this is gonna be an all-out 3-way battle potentially. Or, again, maybe even a potential temporary team-up between the two biggest and most powerful pirate crews at the end of the story, the Straw Hats and the Blackbeard pirates, potentially. And as unrealistic as it sounds on the surface, honestly, it does make a lot of sense to me. I mean, think about what these two fruits truly represent, right? Nika is tied to the sun, freedom, joy, liberation, and all the good vibes that Luffy brings wherever he goes. And meanwhile, Blackbeard has always been tied to the night, and more specifically, the moon. And in case you forgot, Oda drew Blackbeard's childhood where he was crying under the moon, not able to sleep, right? The entire darkness thing, all of it just adds to his moon and night vibes that his character is going on. So, we've got the sun, we've got the moon, light, darkness, yin yang, two sides of the same cosmic coin, two characters who from the moment they were introduced were kind of these very similar and yet so opposed characters, I wouldn't be surprised if Oda's drawing inspiration from even another famous rivalry that he was a part of, like, I don't know, yes, I'm gonna say it, Naruto and Sasuke. Now, in case you never watched Naruto, those two rivals here also represented constantly clashing. They were rivals up until the end, but ultimately they teamed up to take down a godlike threat that was threatening their world, from the outside. It's a classic story of balance, rivalry, and unity that fits perfect with the themes that we see now in One Piece. Now, don't worry here, I'm not saying that Luffy and Blackbeard are gonna be buddy-buddy forever, and I can also see the case where Luffy is way too stubborn to work with Teach, but I do guess it isn't completely out of the question either, at least for a short period of time, and then, I guess kind of like in Naruto, they could still fight afterwards. Also, fun fact, you can join the fight for the ultimate One Piece content by joining my Patreon, because by joining, you not only help me and my team continue to make this content for you on a regular basis with a unique artwork and everything, but you also get access to a ton of cool bonus perks like artwork, early chapter reactions, a lot of bonus content behind the scenes, community discussions, etc, etc. So if you're interested in that, go check out the Patreon, consider signing up in the link in the description below, and we also have a free newsletter if you're just interested in that. But with that being said, let's now get back to Luffy and Blackbeard here, because honestly, I am beyond hyped about this possibility, even if you might hate it, but I think it's really cool. I want you to really think about this. Seeing Luffy and Blackbeard fight side by side with all the baggage that comes with this. I mean, remember that Blackbeard is the main reason that Ace was even at Marineford, so he's kind of ultimately responsible for Luffy's brother's death. So would Luffy be able to put aside his hatred to take down Imu? I mean, damn, like, to me, it would be insanely interesting to see what Oda would do in such a scenario, especially from Luffy's perspective. But here's another really wild thought I had, because I just can't shake the idea that Loki is gonna be way more important to the story than we all ever realized. Though I gotta say, I'm kind of taking this back. I think at this point, we all have a strong feeling that Loki is gonna be one of the central figures of the story, right? So I guess even more important than we realized, because what if Loki actually does have the Sun God fruit, as he says, is kind of what I tried to get here at, right? He already claimed he is the real Sun God when we first met him, and what if he's actually telling the truth? And if Loki's got the sun covered, could that mean that Luffy is the Moon God? Maybe? All right. I know we're getting into some very sensitive territory here, but just hear me out for a second. Maybe Nika isn't just the god of the sun. Okay, we've already been told that Nika is not just the god of freedom and laughter, but also a god of destruction, which, kind of adds a darker layer to the entire legend. So what if Nika had multiple personalities or forms, kind of like Cavendish and his alter ego Hakuba, or just different variations and side to him, right? And I mean, remember that random power back in Dressrosa that was then never brought up again or explained properly? Cavendish is all charming and heroic until he falls asleep and transforms into a wild demonic fighter, and while it's been speculated that it might be connected to his cursed sword or something like that, we just don't actually know. So what if Nika has some similar split of personality? One side brings joy and freedom, the other a beast of chaos and destruction. So it could just be that there are two Nika fruits, two Sun God fruits with like slightly different twists. Or it could just be that Luffy is not the Sun God, but the Moon God, because when you really think about it, I want to make a whole different video about this, but just very quickly, have you not ever thought it was kind of weird that Luffy's always associated with the moon? When he first awakens Gear 5, it's the moon, not the sunrise. The Minks, who are kind of identical in their Sulong form to Nika and like the white flames and stuff, transform when the moon is up, right? All these weird parallels at the Nika dance in front of the moon. Luffy just doesn't seem very associated with the sun. I don't know. It's a whole different video. Let me know if you want to see that. Let's instead now get back to the big question. How in the world are two devil fruits gonna take down Imu, right? I mean, if Rox was already facing Imu and didn't feel like he could beat them at that point straight up, when, he was pretty much the strongest person in the world at that point, then what really makes Rox think that having two legendary devil fruits would make the big difference here? Well, first off, it already tells us one thing that is really important. Haki isn't the only key, at least, to beating Imu. I mean, yeah, I know that Oda has really been hyping up Haki non-stop pretty much ever since the time skip, and he never really stopped. It's been getting more and more important. Like, it's kind of the ultimate power everyone's gotta have. Even major crews like the Red Hair Pirates and even Roger's crew don't have any devil fruit users at all, which kind of hinted that Haki was the single most important thing. But Rox is kind of the opposite, and since Rox couldn't fulfill his plan, clearly raw Haki power alone isn't gonna be enough to break down the real big bosses of the world. So then why would Rox be so desperate for these two specific fruits? Let's look at this a little bit closer. Starting once again with the Darkness Fruit. This thing's most broken ability is to negate other devil fruit powers. Now, this by itself is already huge because I'm kind of wondering if that means that Imu's powers might actually be devil fruit based, which might seem obvious in some regard, right? But we don't really know that for sure, especially with all of the abyss powers going on. They could just straight up be a god or a devil, right? But what if all that power does come from some, broken devil fruit, and the only way to bring Imu down is to take that power away or neutralize it? The Darkness Fruit could do exactly that by nullifying Imu's abilities and making them vulnerable that way. But on top of just that, the Darkness Fruit can also suck in things and trap them in a literal black hole. So maybe part of the plan here is to absorb all of Imu's darkness or even expose their true form. It's kind of like fighting a boss that can't be touched unless you have that one weird specific item that cancels out their invincibility. Or another random thought that we actually did talk about previously before in another video, what if Blackbeard's darkness black hole abilities might just straight up be related to Imu's abyss powers? That could be pretty wild. But now onto the Nika fruit. And this one is of course especially interesting because honestly it feels like Blackbeard's powers alone might be enough to expose Imu, but Rox very clearly thought that he needed those two fruits together, and in case one of them is the Nika fruit, then it has to bring something else extraordinary to the table here. Now I'm sure that Oda has only given us the tip of the icebergs of Luffy's true Nika powers, but from what we've seen so far, Luffy's Nika abilities allow him to warp reality in some absolutely crazy ways. Catching and using the elements like lightning, manipulating the world, even manifesting objects, it seems, basically becoming a living cartoon. But again, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface with its true powers, right? I think that Oda is saving up some wild game-changing power for later, like the central true power of this fruit. Powers that might be able to deliver the final blow to Imu and unravel the entire system that Imu controls, and also finally explaining what truly made the sun god so special. Plus, if Nika is the god of freedom and laughter, but also destruction, maybe there's a duality where Luffy's power can both break things apart and rebuild a new world, right? But then here's something that I'm really unsure about myself. Does Blackbeard even know about all of this, right? Like, does he know how important his own fruit really is? Because it kind of does seem like Blackbeard learned a lot of information that Rox left behind, especially that he needed to get the Darkness Fruit. And so if Blackbeard does know that these devil fruits are going to be the key to taking down Imu, then that explains that this hunt for devil fruits that he's got going on make even more sense now, right? Maybe he doesn't know what the other legendary fruit is quite yet, so he's just trying to get as many OP fruits as he possibly can, trying to figure it out. I could definitely see that being the case. He doesn't really seem to have specifically targeted the Nika powers very much either, aside from Burgess and Dressrosa, so maybe he really doesn't know that it could be the other legendary fruit that he's looking for, or he has not realized that Luffy has eaten it and he's still on the lookout for it. But now we're getting to the point that I think is really interesting, because if Luffy and Blackbeard both need their fruits to take down Imu together, then what happens after, right? Does that mean that Blackbeard is the true final villain and he and Luffy are gonna duke it out after all in one big final battle after Imu? Because let's be real, there is no way that Blackbeard would just let Luffy completely free the world. Blackbeard does seem to want to rule it, and Luffy wouldn't have any of that unless Oda pulled some crazy plot twist where Blackbeard was like, oh yeah, no, I was good all along. I don't know, I'm like thinking of Luthen from Andor, right? Like, I just used some messed up means to do a good thing. I don't know, just don't really see that happening. And that could actually be where Haki finally comes into play too, because if devil fruits are the key to taking down Emu, well, then maybe Haki will be the deciding factor in the Luffy versus Blackbeard clash. That would make a lot of sense for me and be a very nice way to show the importance of both power systems in the endgame. And so at this point, I'm kind of seeing Emu as the first final villain battle, and then Blackbeard as the true big boss at the end. But nonetheless, we're still clearly missing some big puzzle pieces, like what really happened at God Valley and how did that tie in? How did Rocks die? And is Garp, out of all people, actually the key to everything that has happened? Well, you can hear all my answers to all these questions right here, and why I believe also, by the way, that Garp is now actually Pirate King level. Also, otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to all of our fantastic Patreons, and I will see you in the next video.